The long national nightmare is over, and we have made it to draft day yet again. Tonight, the Footballguys College Football Show, we will offer up a preview to get you ready for the weekend.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Footballguys College Football Show. Oh my gosh, I'm so ready for the draft to be here. We're live. We're excited about kind of talking about, anything but mock drafts, dude. I cannot do mock drafts anymore. So we're going to get into, like we usually do on this show, we go through the top 10. What could happen? What are the scenarios? Kind of how does the team build? We'll give it to you all. Then we're going to go through our over-unders, and we'll give you some money picks on that. What are some bets you could place that we like in that? So, hey, let's dive into it. Bryce Young, 101, looks like he's going to the Panthers. Is there any scenario, Jeff, where you're seeing Bryce Young not going there? Are we excited about this? How do we feel?
The only scenario that maybe you could get there is if David Tepper wakes up tomorrow morning and decides that Anthony Richardson is the clone of Cam Newton and they just want to roll with that athletic upside. They want to throw out the short quarterback and the concerns with that and roll with the Superman 2.0 leading that Carolina franchise. But the reality is that's not going to happen. I think that it's pretty clear that this franchise has made the decision that Bryce Young is going to be the number one overall pick. And I imagine that they made the trade up, probably knew in their mind that it was going to be Bryce Young at the time, and I think Houston probably would have loved to swap with them if they were out any other place, and not seeing that swap is probably a good indication of why we haven't seen that, because they know that they're going to take Bryce Young. So, but I do want to pitch to you guys that going through this draft, so they do have an early second still, despite that trade. They have a late third from the Christian McCaffrey trade. They have 2 fourth-round picks. What do you need to see added to this offense this weekend to really feel comfortable about Bryce Young's rookie season moving forward and having immediate success?
So I think the Panthers are set up nicely. I think adding the pieces that they did, the veterans that they did, and Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst, those are all good pieces to put around a young quarterback. When you look at scenarios where that hasn't worked, or when teams have not done that, that's when they're set up to fail. It's a mixture of no weapons and a bad offensive line. I actually think the Panthers have adequate weapons and a good offensive line. In terms of what you're looking at, though, I think you want to see another receiving weapon. DJ Chark and Adam Thielen tend to not be on the field a whole lot, and the depth outside of that is not very good. Now, a receiver could come in the form of a tight end. It could be another wide receiver. I'd personally like to see Josh Downs stay in state and be that early second-round pick and just have a nice little receiver to have some rapport with. Get the little guys together in Carolina, Bryce and Josh Downs. But they could go tight end with that pick as well. I think if one of those, top 30-ish guys in adding in Musgrave and Darnell Washington, I think that would be an intriguing little piece to this offense. But overall, they're set up pretty nicely. They have cohesion on the offensive line. I think you're pretty happy with Bryce's landing spot here.
Yeah, no, I think this team is good. I mean, if they're sitting there and they hit this draft, which, hey, they still got to hit the draft. I mean, they set themselves up in that division, right? That division is not good, and they can be in there. Bryce is what he is. Like, you could have them compete for that division title this year if they hit in the pieces that they need to hit. And so, hey, I'm just here as the guy who never stopped believing in Bryce Young as QB1, and I'm gonna get rewarded, and that's why we're here on the show. Just letting you guys know, my guy scored well on the S2. That's all I'm going to say. All right, let's go to number 2 pick here. Off the board in terms of DraftKings and odds and all that kind of stuff. But, what the heck's going to happen here with the Texans? Like, when you're looking at what they're going to do, Daniel Jeremiah has talked about how, no, it has to be a quarterback. It's all smoked. And other guys are saying, no, it's not. What are we doing here at number 2, Jeff? What's going on here?
So for the last couple of weeks, I operated in a place where I did believe it was going to be Tyree Wilson. Looking at prototype defensive ends in DeMeco Ryan's scheme, he fits that bill. He looks like those guys that San Francisco continually took at the top of the draft over the last handful of years. Where the line has moved now and looking at the whole picture, I think that there was a time when Houston thought perhaps they could take Wilson at 2 and then still feel comfortable moving the 12th pick and grabbing the quarterback that they wanted. But I think that has left. I think reality has set in with them, and I think that Will Levis is going to be their pick at number 2. I think there are alternatives for the future. Obviously, if they were willing to commit and earn that Caleb Williams pick next year, that might look pretty nice, or even the Drake May consolation prize. Or Christian made a good point in the chat earlier this week, and he talked about how, maybe Kyler Murray would be in play, or maybe Brock Purdy might be in play, or Trey Lance might be in play, depending on what the 49ers decide to do with the quarterback position. But I do think that the Texans are going to take Will Levis. You look at what they've built their offense around. They're going to be a very physical offense, and they're going to run the ball. They're going to, which opens up the play action pass, which opens up the ability to attack vertically. They don't have the pieces probably in the offense right now to attack vertically, but I do think that Levis will be the pick, and they'll set a physical tone on the offensive side.
Yeah, I still have no clue. And I think that that's what made mock drafting so hard this year. And that's why there are so many good narratives about this draft. So shout out the Texans for keeping everything close to the vest. I think there's a world in which Will Levis is the pick. I also still think that Tyree Wilson, assuming full health and good medicals, could still be the pick. They have a lot of options. I think if they decide to pass on quarterback here, maybe this is the Hendon Hooker spot at 12. Maybe the other 4 quarterbacks go. One of these quarterbacks is going to fall. And I think there's a shot that they do get a quarterback at 12 if they want one. I also, I like to talk about timelines. That was a big thing with the Chicago Bears this year, and resetting the quarterback timeline. The Houston Texans are not currently on a winning timeline. I think they're still 2 to 3 years out. They know they're going to be bad again next year. And so I think that's the thinking of not going quarterback this year, kicking the can down the road, maybe seeing what you have with Davis Mills in terms of what the offense is going to look like. I think Davis Mills could potentially be successful in that type of scheme. But I also wouldn't be shocked if it's Will Levis. We talk about D'Amico Ryans and his ties to the Shanahan scheme and everything like that. Will Levis also has ties to the Shanahan scheme, and I could fully see them making sure they got him ahead of Indianapolis, who seems to want to take Will Levis.
Do you guys see Stroud at all? No Stroud here?
I think the agent's a problem with Stroud. Sharing an agent with Deshaun Watson, I don't think that McNair is willing to open that at all. I just don't think that. I think that's a non-starter, to be honest with you. And I think that there's enough limitations in Stroud's game already that come into play with it. But I think the way that the Watson relationship ended, I don't think that they want to work with that agency because they do represent CJ Stroud. But I think Christian made a good point there, talking about Hooker at 12 versus Davis Mills. Davis Mills is younger than Hendon Hooker. And I know that Hendon Hooker might be a first-round pick tomorrow night, and that means that he's got untapped worlds of potential. But again, Davis Mills is younger than Hendon Hooker, and this might be the best situation for Davis Mills. So it would boggle my mind to use that 12 pick on Hendon Hooker versus some of the elite premier position talent and not just rolling the dice with Davis Mills, and worst case scenario, you get Caleb Williams out of it. But I don't think CJ Stroud's in consideration here.
I also don't. I have another question though. Does Will Levis beat out Davis Mills if they have an open competition in camp?
Yes. I think so. I think it's close though. I think it's closer than it needs to be if number 2 pick in the NFL draft.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an open competition, I think. So that's a poorly worded question. But Jeff, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that Mills did not play terrible football given the situation that he was put into. And things went off the rails a little bit towards the middle point of last season. And he ended up ultimately getting benched. But again, I just think that he was put in a no-win scenario, and he did probably about as best as you could expect.
He did. It's just, I don't know. I think the resetting the quarterback market is the interesting point here. But I also don't think, a lot of people thought the Texans are going to be number 1 pick this year, and they didn't get it. And if you kick that can down the road again next year and you don't get Caleb, how many years are you going to keep kicking it down the road? And I get Mays in the draft, and I know we have that. So I understand it. I get it there. But what if Mills plays just good enough? What if he has those 4 wins or 5 wins, and you're looking at what other teams that maybe fall out, and then they do the same thing as we saw, like these other teams do, the Bears and all that stuff. I think that realistically, like, I don't know. The agency thing is weird to me. So I know we got to go. But that agency covers a lot of players in NFL. You're just going to not draft guys or not like get guys from that agency because of one bad. And I don't want to minimize the bad, but it was bad. But I don't know. Like I think there's question marks with Stroud. I understand the stuff. If you're going to go with that and you want to do it because of the S2 and the other stuff that you're looking at, maybe processing stuff like that, I don't think it could be the agency thing. Now, is McNair dumb enough? Yes. So that's where it probably comes from.
I mean, a quarterback's not a defensive tackle. I mean, and
I get it.
Problem with the one quarterback, and you're going to step right into the other quarterback.
I get it.
There's
doesn't
also
mean that Houston's not, poorly run.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to consider, that, you know, as you're watching the draft and as you're seeing these things happen, that you're saying, well, why would they do that? It's because they're badly run. These are not good run organizations that are making these selections at the top of the draft. So to assume that they know exactly what they're doing, it's like, what? Yeah, you can be driven crazy. Why would they take Will Levis? And it's probably because he half understands the system that they're going to run. And he probably said the one right thing in the interview, and it's a poorly run organization. What do you expect?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to 3. So Arizona picking a 3 right now. It's pretty much, it could be a trade. It's pretty good trade, pick there. Paris Johnson's plus 225, CJ's plus 240, Will Anderson's plus 250 here. Christian, we'll start with you. Arizona. What do we think? What do we think on this pick? Trade back, probably most likely.
Trade back preferred. The problem is, I think I saw a stat. We haven't seen a trade back in the top 9 in the last 9 years, something like that. 4 years, something like that. I don't know. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I do know that it's really tough to trade, especially in the top 5. Now with this quarterback class, and if Will Levis does go too, I think that's the interesting scenario, right? I think Arizona wants to take Paris Johnson Jr. from everything we've seen in the last 72 hours ish. I think it was Will Anderson, and that was an easy pick about 3 days ago. But I think they want to take Paris Johnson. I think I heard that Kyler Murray really wants Paris Johnson. I think that's a fine pick. I also know that they just extended their starting left tackle, DJ Humphries. So I don't understand. I guess you're getting youth, you're kind of resetting everything, and you can play Paris on the right side. And I think that that's the one thing that separates Paris from maybe the rest of the offensive tackle class is the the right guard play that he had 2 years ago that has shown that he can kind of switch that footwork up. I think teams are really going to value that. I also think this whole offensive line class is being undervalued in media mock drafts right now. And we're going to see a lot of these guys fly off the board. So I think they'd love to move back even 5 spots, 6 spots, and get Paris Johnson there. I think they'll be stuck taking him at 3, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to accomplish a move back, you almost have to throw out the draft value chart, which is a difficult thing for general managers to do. But because I look at my mock that's coming live tomorrow morning on Football Guys, I've got Atlanta moving up to get this pick, and Atlanta has put a lot of resources into rebuilding their defense this offseason, adding Calais Campbell, adding Jesse Bates, and when you look at where they're lined up in the draft, they're kind of stuck where they're going to likely see guys like Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, maybe Tyree Wilson all off the board before they hit the clock, and they don't necessarily need one of the tackles. And so I think that they're a team in my mind that I know everybody wants to see Bijan Robinson to Atlanta because they run the ball a lot. So Bijan would be great. But I don't know. That just seems an area where they've been so aggressive at rebuilding the defense via free agency that seems like an aggressive area potentially for a franchise that an ownership that we've seen be aggressive when it comes to the draft. And I think that Will Anderson would be a nice capping piece for them if they were to do that.
Yeah, this is where it gets to where these quarterbacks are going to go, right? Like, and I think this is the big, we don't know. Like, to me, I'm not putting money on this stuff because this is like a big, I guess some people will, they're degenerates and they're out there. But like, to me, there's just so many unknowns in my opinion where that's at. Yeah, Christian's hit on the head. I think they want to take Paris Johnson, but they'd rather take Paris Johnson at 8 if they can get a little bit of something back. And I think that is really what we're looking at here. And then that kind of leaves Indy. So we have Indy at 4 here. Depending on where the board goes. So if Levis goes off at 2, which I think Indy likes Levis. I think that they do, and I think that is a real kind of thing. I know we hear the buzzwords and all that kind of stuff. Then you have Stroud, maybe still out there. Richardson. We haven't talked really about Anthony Richardson in a while. We've seen his over under drop a little bit, so it's been moving. So when we're looking at maybe his draft spot where it's going to be, so Indy's got to take a quarterback, right? They're not rolling out, Minshew Mania next year. That's not what they're going to do. So they got to take a quarterback here. If, let's say, Levis is off the board, so Levis is gone. Let's say at 2, Houston does grab him. They take Stroud, right? They have to, right, Jeff?
I think that they do. If you paid attention to the combine coverage, I know Anthony Richardson put on an absolute show at the combine, but from everything I've seen, the fans, everybody in the stands were chanting for CJ Stroud, and it did seem like that franchise, the proximity to, I mean, there's an imaginary boundary in between, but the proximity to Columbus, the natural bleed over from Ohio State fans, I think that putting CJ Stroud in a dome with Jonathan Taylor, I think that lines up very ideally. I know Shane Steichen has he coached Jalen Hurts, so certainly he would want to coach Anthony Richardson. And he was also the offensive coordinator when Justin Herbert was a rookie, so Will Levis would be a natural fit too. But I think that when you look at what Stroud can do, he's a prototype quarterback, and I understand that there are concerns about him. I understand that some of the processing things are frustrations as both as a draft analyst and as an Ohio State fan were things that drove me nuts over the last 2 years. And I can understand concerns there on NFL franchises, but when you get an opportunity to add a player like this or add these quarterbacks to your franchise, I think it's just night and day scenario from talking about last year, the slide with Kenny Pickett, the slide with Malik Willis. I mean, these guys are just different prospects, and usually you don't see those quarterbacks drop that much.
Yep. I think they really want Will Levis, and I think that's why Houston has played everything the way they have, because I think they were trying to leverage Indy to come up to 2. Indy's not going to do that, though. I think they are comfortable with the group behind. I don't think there is another position that Indianapolis would take here. I think that would be silly. They do need an edge defender, so I guess I wouldn't be critical if they took Will Anderson here. I think that would actually be a decent pick. If you say, well, we know we're going to be awful again, so maybe we'll enter the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. But the Stroud thing's interesting to me. I think if Shane Steichen had his pick, he would pick Richardson. He's been on record saying, you can improve accuracy with mechanics and you can do these things with these players. So clearly that lends itself to he wants Richardson. Unfortunately, I don't think he has his choice here. That's not where the Colts are as a franchise. And so if Levis is off the board, I don't know who the pick would be. I don't know if they would trust their new head coach or if they would say CJ Stroud has the production and he's a really good quarterback, so let's stop overthinking this and take him at 4. I think that could be the play, but the S2 score is the make or break thing. You can literally just read down the list and know who's going to be good, according to some people in the media. So he's going to be bad, allegedly.
If Levis goes off the board at 2, I think Indy's sitting there like, oh my God, it's kind of scramble mode a little bit. And I think that they'll hope Arizona uses all that clock. And they're like, okay, how are we going to kind of handle this? Because I think that's where you can see this go off the rails a little bit with these teams. Now, if you're looking at if Levis doesn't go off at 2, let's say Houston takes whatever the case may be, an edge or whatever we talked about, like Indy, yeah, I think they sit there and they're going to take Levis, and I think they'll be happy with that. Stroud here seems like the pick. Like if Levis is off the board, like I have a hard time seeing you cannot keep punting that position if you're Indy. They've tried it, they've done it, like they've done this over and over again, and we've seen it. Phillip Rivers, wins. These guys just. It doesn't work. Matt Ryan, like it just does not work. So like I feel like it's got to be there. Let's look at 5, Seattle. So when you're looking at this again, maybe a dark horse for Anthony Richardson at plus 330, or maybe one of these quarterbacks that go there. So I think that is something to look at. Jalen Carter's minus 225 to go around here. Will Anderson plus 275. What are we thinking here, Jeff?
It's so difficult to project because I do think that Seattle and Detroit are both at similar off, and Geno Smith are going to be their quarterbacks of the present, and they are perfectly fine with that. But when you say it out loud, I wonder if they're saying it out loud in the building that Jared Goff and Geno Smith are going to be our quarterbacks. And you have to look at it and look at the picks that were traded to move into this position. You giving up Russell Wilson, you giving up Matthew Stafford, giving up quarterbacks identities of your franchise. And I do think that there's a certain storybook fairy tale element of turning around and using one of those picks that you gave up for those guys to grab your next guy moving forward. And both of these teams have to not expect to be picking in this area anytime soon, because we saw the Seattle make the playoffs last year. Detroit is primed to take over the NFC North with Aaron Rodgers finally leaving that division, and questions with some of the other teams there. So they have to be answering and asking those questions inside the building and saying, hey, are we going to get another bite at this, or do we go with one of these guys? And then you look at all the betting markets and you look at all the movements and everything that they've said suggests that that's not even a consideration. And for that not to even be a consideration, with this isn't like you're choosing Chase Young or Nick Bosa here in these spots prospects, but at the same time, it's just you have to roll the dice as the quarterback. And that's where I believe all the markets, everything seems to indicate that Anthony Richardson wouldn't be in consideration. Seattle would be a perfect landing spot for Anthony Richardson, where they can play Geno Smith for a year. Hopefully Geno Smith's play stays at the level that it was last year. They can develop Anthony Richardson. They can put it into an offense with a strong offensive line, a strong run game, DK Metcalf there, Tyler Lockett there, and then hopefully flip and work that cycle, that same cycle that puts you in this position. If somebody else is desperate enough that they go in and grab Geno Smith, and all of a sudden you're grabbing another first-round pick, and that's how you just continue to build there. And it just, I don't know. It's surprising to me that they haven't been more aggressive. But again, at the same time, I wouldn't say a word if I wanted one of these quarterbacks and I was sitting at 5, and that's exactly how I would play it.
I'm so glad you ended with that, Jeff, because you guys know one of my conspiracy theories right now is that about half the league is interested in drafting Anthony Richardson, and no one is saying a thing about him. And so the media is not on him. And so the betting markets aren't on him, because everyone says, holy crap, this kid could be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. That is his ceiling. His ceiling is somewhere right behind Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, that group of guys. Now, whether he hits that or not depends a lot on coaching. It depends a lot on him. But when you're looking at a player like that, of course you're not going to tell people, oh yeah, we're thinking about him. Yeah, we'll think about him, because you know everyone else in the league is. So yeah, I actually, in my final mock, we'll get to Detroit here in a second, but I had Detroit move up to 3 and go ahead and take Richardson ahead of the Colts, because I know there's been a lot of Levis buzz, and I understand that. I also think there's a world in which the QB2 off the board could be this elite athlete, the most elite athlete that we've ever seen at the position, because that would be the smart thing to do. And sometimes the NFL can be smart. Seattle and Detroit should be in that sweepstakes. If one of CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson are on the board for either of them, they should sprint to the podium and take their quarterback of the future. I think that's easy team building. And I know you can make an argument, we're in a position to win right now. Yeah, but you also have a second first-round pick. It's not like you're giving up the shot at another impact player. You are simply adding to what could be a dynasty for both of these teams.
So playing the scenario out, if Will Levis goes number 2 in the draft, I know Arizona has said nobody has called them at all. You got to believe that there is a very real scenario where Will Levis goes off the board number 2, and all of a sudden that phone on number 3, you've got Seattle, you've got Detroit, you've got the Raiders, you've got Atlanta, you've got Tennessee, all hammering Arizona at number 3, because they know that a quarterback's not going to last after 4. And I think that the reason why Detroit and Seattle have been so quiet is your hope is that Houston talks themselves out of a quarterback, takes somebody else at number 2, and you really even want it out there that Houston can grab a quarterback with 12, and because Houston's dumb enough to believe that, then they don't take a quarterback at 2, then all of a sudden Arizona's sitting there and the entire league is saying, well, there's 3 quarterbacks still on the board. We don't need to trade up with 3 and pay Arizona's price. We know one will go off at Indy, and if that happens, then Seattle and Detroit hit the other 2, and they're off the board before you even get a chance to talk about it.
Yeah. I think it'd be almost malpractice for them not to take a quarterback if those two guys are there. You have to. Like, this is the reason why you make these trades and you can get in those top 5 and 6 categories, and you don't have to play Anthony Richardson next year if you're Seattle. You don't necessarily have to do it. Like, you can just sit there and say, Geno, go. All right, we're going to work. Okay, now after that contract, you can get out of that. Then you have Anthony going forward, and you could compete in a division now where you can't, and Seattle can compete in that division. Yeah, the Rams are down. The Cardinals are going to be down for a while. Then you have the Niners, and you can go compete. And I think that's when you're looking at that. I think you have to. I really feel like you have to go take that. And like you said, it really comes down to freaking Houston. Houston's going to really make or break this draft with how everything kind of plays out. Because if they don't take one, it kills Cardinals. It's going to kill them. And if they do, it's going to help out the Cardinals a lot because then they have that leverage. And I do think that. But if you're Arizona, you more than likely want to just move back to 5 or 6 around there so you can still get Paris Johnson. Like, you want to move in that area. So I think that just plays a big role in that. But I feel like, I don't know. I still think the Lions should draft a quarterback. Like, Goff is fine. Goff is serviceable. Goff's not winning you a Super Bowl, and he's yet to see you make a playoffs yet. And I think, yeah, he's done that. These quarterbacks could do that. And I think you have to do that with that second pick in the first round.
Well, and I think Christian nails it there with the Lions, because if you're Arizona and you're sitting there and are you going to trade Anthony Richardson within your division to Seattle and play him all the time? Or are you going to take that Detroit trade, move down to 6 and still grab your guy? I mean, Seattle's almost locked out. Seattle needs to pray that Arizona doesn't get a call if they're thinking about taking a quarterback. Otherwise, they could just be locked out of this thing completely already.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's look at Detroit's odds, and then we've kind of talked about Detroit a little bit, but Witherspoon at -130. I think a lot of people have them locked into that corner role. Like, they think, hey, they're going to kind of go there. Jalen Carter +380, Wilson +650, Stroud +900 there at Detroit. The Stroud one's interesting. That's some good odds there. What do we think here real quick, Christian? Detroit, they really could go anywhere, to be honest. Like, do you think they need another corner? Do you feel like corner is really a big area of need, even with that second pick they have?
I think corner makes sense. They signed a couple of guys, I think both on 1-year deals, Emmanuel Mosley and Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton's deal is actually, I think, 3 years. But they traded Jeffrey Okudah. They definitely need depth at the corner position. But I think what you're locking in 2 starters already. You have CJ Gardner-Johnson there now as well, who plays a lot of slot corner.
Yeah.
I had been of the mindset that they were going corner as soon as that Jeffrey Okudah trade happened. But there have been rumors that Jalen Carter doesn't get past this pick. I don't think that works. I think, as much as we've heard about Jalen Carter's work ethic and how he needs to be coached, maybe Dan Campbell's that guy. Maybe Dan Campbell says, I don't want that. Like, I really don't want to have to do that. I need guys that are already bought in. And once again, I think they should take a quarterback. But I think if all the quarterbacks go or something and they're kind of left out to dry, I think if Tyree Wilson makes it this far, that's a really good scheme fit opposite Aiden Hutchinson. I think they definitely need edge help. They do need a defensive tackle, but man, like you said, Houston determines so much of this draft, and ultimately a quarterback here is the right pick, in my opinion.
So what the whole thing that we didn't talk about in this is, okay, you've got the scenario where Bryce Young goes, Will Levis goes, the Cardinals can't move, and the Cardinals are stuck taking Paris Johnson. They're afraid they won't get him. Then you see Stroud go to Indy, and then the Seattle goes with Richardson. Detroit's sitting here, and Will Anderson just falls right into their lap. And, I think that is out there, and that's very much in play. And that's not even a consideration, I think, on most people's minds. So I can't imagine them going corner, just the value, because if you mock it out, if you look at that pick 18, and there's going to be so much value at corner sitting at 18. I think that Deonte Banks is going to be sitting there, Joey Porter Jr. You might even see Christian Gonzalez fall into that range where maybe a little jump, maybe they move up to 14, 15, something like that, and they grab that corner. And I just think that taking corner at 6 is ignoring the value that's going to be available on defensive line. That's just not going to be available at pick 18. And that's just not how you would go with it. But I do think that Will Anderson, if you want to throw some money down, and the odds on that are pretty long right now, but I think there's a real scenario that gets you there.
No, I can't believe we talked about Will Anderson falling. At this point.
One of Seattle or Detroit will have Will Anderson by the end of the day. Like, I think that those are his two spots, unless this Paris Johnson hype's fake. But I mean, there's too much smoke there. He's a scheme fit for both of them too. It's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Raiders. Raiders. What are we doing here? Paris Johnson plus 300 here. Christian Gonzalez plus 350. Witherspoon plus 330. The Raiders are in a weird spot. Just even trying to mock the Raiders. Like, do they hang out? They go with Jimmy. Is that what they kind of look at? And they just say, hey, that's going to be our guy. Will they go corner? They need a lot. When's the last time the Raiders have had a corner, like a shutdown guy on the out, like that and they need it. Like they really do. That's been consistent for them. I think they've struggled there. They need help on their offensive line. They need to help a lot of places here at the Raiders here. So just based on that board, let's say the quarterback's probably not the option. If the quarterback doesn't fall there, maybe Stroud gets there though, and you're like, hey, will they go there? Where are we going with the Raiders, Jeff?
In my mind, I think this is a corner pick, and I think that Devin Witherspoon is the ideal guy in this because you're looking at the division that you would be playing in. You're going to be playing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. You're going to be playing Justin Herbert twice a year. You're going to be playing whatever happens with Russell Wilson twice a year. I think you need a certain mentality to play corner in that division that with those quarterbacks you're going to be going against. The Raiders were a bottom 5 pass defense last year, and that is just a huge need. Max Crosby holds down one end, and they do have Chandler Jones at the other end. So I think they're feeling a little bit comfortable on the ends there. You just need to add that alpha corner. And I think that Witherspoon is the guy in this draft that has that mentality to go in there and to be willing to be a tone setter for that defense. And that's what they need.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's what separates Devin Witherspoon from the rest of the corner class is that CB1 mentality. There have been some questions about that with Christian Gonzalez and some of the things I've been reading in NFL circles, at least. I think he'll be fine when you're that elite of an athlete. Same thing with Deonte Banks. And Joey Porter Jr., it's kind of a mix of the two. I think he's got a little bit of that mentality, but this is too rich for him. Witherspoon would be perfect. And I think Tyree Wilson's a shout just because you're getting two dominant edge rushers. But you mentioned Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Those guys are so creative in evading sacks that it's almost like you have to go corner over edge when you play in the AFC West. So I think you're spot on, Jeff.
You guys forgot about Let's Ride. Well, Let's Ride. What, you forgot about Let's Ride. Russell Wilson. You guys know?
Well, I mentioned him.
Yeah, I did.
No, but I do think that as you're mapping this out and valuing this out, you're looking at, so let's say Will Anderson goes, maybe Jalen Carter goes. Like the Raiders have to move out of this pick. I think when you really look at it, unless they really absolutely love Witherspoon or maybe they decide one of the tackles, this is just a prime area where they need to move back. Because I think that when you look at the value and the depth that is available at edge, it ends very quickly. And you might be sitting there and maybe the Falcons next go Nolan Smith and maybe the Eagles take Van Ness and all of a sudden all the edges are completely wiped out and you're not touching that position for 10 to 15 picks. Whereas if the Raiders are truly thinking corner, again, dropping back in that 15 to 18 range or 14 or so, you're still going to get an elite top end corner and you're going to get something very good dropping from 7 to that range. But again, it always takes that player, that team that is willing to make that trade with you. But I do think that the talent at edge is going to be thinning out in this area. And I think that somebody will get aggressive and think about jumping some of the teams that coming out.
Yeah. No, I agree. Let's go to the Falcons because this is where we get to talk about Bijan. Bijan plus 200. Nolan Smith at plus 250. Oh, Van Ness at plus 380. Don't touch that one. Stroud plus 600 there as well. The Falcons, man, it is tough to see. I've been seeing it. I think Jeremiah mocked him. Daniel Jeremiah mocked Bijan to the Falcons as well. He said, hey, put him around London. Put him around Pitts. Give Desmond Ridder some weapons, which we like Desmond Ridder, but that's still funny to me every time I hear that. I think when you're looking at this, does Bijan make sense, Christian, for the Falcons? Like, do you feel like they can do this with like running back position, top 10? You're going to take Bijan when I think no one's a great pick here. I think, when you're looking at it on the board.
My thing with taking Bijan here is you already took Kyle Pitts 2 years ago. You can't take two non-premium positions in the top 10 within 3 years. Everything should be in that window of 3 years, in my opinion. I think that's how teams should look at things. And if I took a non-premium position 2 years ago, I don't care how good Bijan is. I have to go with a premium position because that's how you retool, refuel that talent bucket. I think Nolan Smith is the easy pick here, in my opinion. You keep him in state. Once again, you get an absolute leader. We've kind of seen what that looked like when he got hurt with his torn pec last year, but I don't. It's fun to think about Bijan going there. He's not the best scheme fit in terms of what he can do. Can he do all outside zone stuff? Absolutely. Is that his greatest superpower? No, I think his between the tackle stuff on the inside. Now, maybe they go heavy inside zone and it mitigates that. I know it's a popular pick. I cannot see them doing that twice in 3 years.
Guys, so this scenario that we're talking through right now, who's Tyree Wilson playing for right now?
I mean, for me, the Texans, but the scenario that we've walked through, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, he's playing for the Falcons. If Tyree's there, there's no way he's not coming off the board.
Yeah, it's just the idea of, I mean, you would need the completely Falcons taking Bijan Robinson as franchise malpractice, putting it bluntly. They have a rookie running back last year that rushed for 1,000 yards. That is a perfect scheme fit exactly for what Arthur Smith wants to do. They have depth that if they want to add to that backfield, they can add a guy like Tajay Spears, or they can add a guy like Zach Evans later in the draft and be able to have a component, an element to match up with Algier in the backfield. Do they still have Cordero Patterson around there? The idea that you're going to take Bijan Robinson when there are elite edge rushers on the board, or that there are values that you can recuperate from somebody moving up for an offensive lineman, for a tackle, for a premier position, is absolutely ludicrous. And I understand the thought process behind it, but I don't think that is putting any step in front of that thought process.
No, I mean, Algier had over 1,000 yards rushing last year.
Right.
It's not like you need it. Like, if Anderson is there and they don't take Anderson, they ship these asses to the moon. Like that should not happen.
But they took Kyle Pitts over a quarterback that year. Justin Fields was still there. Mac Jones was still there. And so, do I have faith that the Falcons are going to make the right decision? Not really. I don't have a ton of faith in that organization right now. I have faith in Arthur Smith to scheme up the best offense he possibly can with the players that are there, but I just don't think that they're building the team the right way currently.
If you feel like you've hit on that round 4 pick with Algier, why are you stepping into an elite top 10 asset at the same position? If you really wanted a second running back, you would go to the round 4 again and say, let's strike gold twice in a row. It's just, I don't know. It's just terrible team building.
Yeah. Well, but like we've said, teams picking in these areas, they are not very good at team building. They've struggled with that. So, I think that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. All right, Bears, Christian's favorite team now. Darnell Wright plus 225, Carter plus 275, Johnson Jr. is plus 350, Skoronski's going at plus 380. Offensive line feels like kind of from everything we've got. Carter could be there. Bears definitely kind of have some options here. They did a great job of that trade back. They're still in a great spot here. Like the Bears are still in a good spot here to pick guys on the board. Pretty elite talent here. We're going to go with the fan first. We'll go Christian here and the analyst. What do we think? What do you want your Bears to do?
If this is how the board fell, and say we toss Tyree Wilson to the Falcons, and Paris Johnson Jr.'s off, I want them to trade back. I want them to go back, take Broderick Jones. I think a feasible trade option would be to move back to the Commanders pick if they're coming up for a quarterback and add Chase Young, because you have to pay Chase Young. I think the Commanders would be fine with that as a price point. On the other side of things, like if they're sitting here and picking, take Skoronski. Don't get cute with it. Take the high floor, still high ceiling player, in my opinion. Skoronski gets a lot of flack for the length, but technically he is so sound. He's got some of the quickest feet. If he fails, he can move into guard, and then he can be an all-pro for you. And that's a perfect pick when you're trying to just elevate the floor of your team right now and put pieces around what is already some really good bones in Justin Fields, DJ Moore, that whole crew. I understand the Darnell Wright stuff. I understand the Jalen Carter stuff. I think talent-wise, Jalen Carter is the easy pick, but character-wise, I don't know that they even would have him high on their board right now. And same thing with Darnell Wright. We're kind of hearing some buzz about that. So I think Skoronski's easy. He's right down the road. He's been in Chicago his whole life, and I think Ryan Poles is going to eat that up.
Yeah, I mean, you do mention a scenario with Washington. If Chase Young is the freight, then I think that they would love to do that. And Chase Young played on that team with Justin Fields, and I think that they probably have some sort of a pre-existing relationship. But I'd be nervous about dropping to 16. Like, I think that I think you'd almost have to have a quarterback on the board in Washington to pay a quarterback price, I think, to drop to 16, because the problem is, as you map it out, if you drop down to 16, I think you're saying goodbye to the top 4 offensive tackles, and you're really looking at saying goodbye to a tier of offensive linemen, and you're operating on the offensive line on day 2, and then you're really examining on the edges are likely gone as well. You're looking at probably a cornerback, or maybe if he's there, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Maybe if you're dropping to 16, maybe that's where the Bijan Robinson enters the conversation for the Bears. Might be the scenario, but that's really what you're looking at to make that move. And I think that somebody would really have to pay for that, because I completely agree that I think Skoronski's the right pick here, because again, just that high floor. Yeah, maybe he's not a left tackle, but maybe he's just a right tackle, which is already what Darnell Wright is just a right tackle. But maybe he's an elite guard that you're getting Quentin Nelson for the middle of your offensive line for Justin Fields here moving forward. I mean, all those scenarios are in play.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up the top 10 here. The Eagles, who, man, I don't know what the heck they're going to do here. I mean, the Eagles are pretty much your wild card. I think they can move back when you're looking at kind of who's on the board. If the quarterback is still there, I think this could be one of those. They love adding first, guys. Like, they just love it. So if they could find someone if they need a quarterback, maybe there's that. The way we've played out this board, though, I'm going to tell you right now, Howie, I know he doesn't pick corners in the first. I know. I don't yell at me, Eagles fans. But if Gonzalez is still there, if Christian Gonzalez is still there, that feels like, to me, hey, Bradbury and Slay are there this year, but that salary cap and the way it's getting closed around their neck, they need a guy that can step in and be that cheap. Hey, can be 4.38 speed, 6'2". He has that kind of upside and that athlete. I just feel like if Christian Gonzalez is there, this is why you make that trade. You are in the top 10. You can get an elite guy that's going to be able to take over, kind of be a spot starter if you need it, can come in and be an impact guy if you need it on that team, kind of like what they do. They just kind of put those depth pieces there. Am I crazy there, Jeff? What do you think?
No, you're not crazy. I do think that they're going to go on the line at this pick. I understand the value. I just look at what Howie Roseman has done traditionally, and I think that they just want to continue to either pump pass rushers or build that offensive line. If Skoronski's there, then you got a guy that can be an elite guard right away, and maybe he's a long-term takeover solution for Lane Johnson as Lane Johnson ages out. The edge rushers that my mock, I have Tyree Wilson landing in the spot in my mock, and a lot of it is just how the board kind of plays out. The scenarios that we talked about with if the quarterbacks go, if other edge rushers go, if other premium, if offensive linemen are going off the board. There are scenarios in play that I think people aren't even wrapping their mind around right now, I think, with the Eagles, but I would be surprised if they don't go edge, because as you look at the other picks that they have coming up at that back end of that first round, I think DeJuan Jones might be a guy that might be in play there. Osiris Torrance might be a play there. Maybe you're looking at Anton Harrison there, and you're able to grab that offensive lineman there. But I just think they put so much value on rushing the passer and continuing to have those waves and waves of guys that they can throw on the defensive line.
Yeah, I think you've got to go trench here. You don't have to. If I were the GM, I would take Bijan Robinson and just mail it in. That's the easiest pick I would ever make. But Howie doesn't do that. There's some legit rumblings, and it's just consistent. The Eagles might take him. He said he wants to play with Jalen Hurts. Like, I think he's trying to manifest that too. There's a lot of smoke there, though, and I wonder if Howie breaks his little draft rules for this one luxury pick, knowing that, once again, he has a second first-round pick. It's the same thing as the Seattle-Detroit conversation, just not a premium position. But when you're that close to a Super Bowl, I think you have to take a little bit of risk. I know how he's kind of risk averse. He does go with the premium positions. I gave him Lucas Van Ness in my final mock. I would not take Lucas Van Ness in the top 10. I also think how he's going to look at that athleticism and the potential that's sitting there and say, yeah, we can work with that. Their defensive line is not looking good long term, and I think that they do need to refuel that area of their team. But definitely a wild card. One of the tougher teams to mock for. I want Bijan there for fantasy purposes. I know you say he's not a good. It's not a good landing spot, but he'll score 700 touchdowns a year.
Yeah. So the rumor that came out on Saturday was that Derrick Henry had already been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Titans are sitting at 11, right behind the Eagles. And so I've got the Titans landing Bijan Robinson in my mock draft, and I wonder if that floating that Derrick Henry to the Eagles, or trying to get a little bit of traction there on thinking making the Eagles think a different direction from Bijan Robinson, or I wonder if this might be in play where the Bears are sitting there with a couple offensive linemen they're comfortable with at 9, and the Titans are sitting there at 11. Maybe they make that mini jump and move above the Eagles and grab Bijan right out from under them. And I think there's certainly a lot of smoke going on to Bijan Robinson to the Eagles, but it makes you wonder that if he's valued to the point where Howie Roseman is willing to take him with the 10th pick in the draft, I think that there are probably more poorly run franchises sitting right behind there that are thinking, then this is the spot that we need to move up and jump if we're going to grab this guy.
Man, listen, I'm a Dallas fan. If Bijan went to the Eagles, I'd be scared. Like, I would be like, damn it, they're going to win again. Because if they take him, I really feel like they could win the Super Bowl next year. And I know we talk about running backs, and I get it. Like, I don't need you in the comments yelling at me. He gives them something. I like Sanders last year. Bijan is Bijan Robinson. And I think that they could you imagine trying to stop those two in the red zone?
No.
Like Jalen Hurts and Bijan, and then AJ Brown on the outside with Devonta. Like, that offense would be, and even Dallas Goedert, that offense would be unstoppable with that line. Like, and as long as they stayed healthy, I cannot see you trying to stop defenses. There's no way. There's no team that could stop them there. And I think that's why I keep saying, like, yeah, I don't think Howie Roseman going to do it, but he might. Like, he might be like looking at it like, you know what, might as well. I got 2 picks. Let's roll with it, and then we'll go get him. So I hope he doesn't, as a Cowboys fan.
So when Jerry Jones is listening to our show here over his morning breakfast, he's thinking of that same scenario. Like, what if Jerry Jones decides, like, let's just fuck it down and let's just go up to 9 to make sure that Bijan is not going to be in this division. I'm just saying. I just think that if teams have figured it out that Roseman would go Robinson at 10, I think that says a lot about how he would be valued around the league. And I think Chicago is sitting in a perfect spot where maybe they move back just a little bit and allow somebody to slide in and grab that.
And even though I say that it'd be a Bijan, if you go up and move up for him, I think that's a mistake. So, like, it's weird because I think giving up more capital than what you need to for a running back, I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
I thought Christian was going to yell at me. All right, let's go through the over-unders here. Let's go through that. Christian will run us through it. We're just going to do over-unders for you guys, what we would do, prop bets, and kind of talk about where these players are going to go.
Yeah, we'll call this the Sportsbook Rundown this week. First one we're going to do is Anthony Richardson, over under 4.5, actually moved to 7.5. So now we're going Anthony Richardson over under 7.5. Reminder for those listening, over would be picked later in the draft, under would be earlier in the draft. For example, if the Falcons took Anthony Richardson, that would be the over at pick 8. Kevin, you go first, and we'll get this rolling.
So I'm going to go over 7.5. I think he goes over.
Jeff?
I'm going to go under because I live in Christian's world where he thinks that half the league really wants this guy and nobody's talking about it right now. And that's driving the lack of media around it is because teams don't want any media around it. And he just put on such a show at the combine. And I think the upside is just so high that if you can grab under 7.5, so many quarterback needs are there.
Yeah. I'm going under. I understand if he goes over. I always remember that Trey Lance was not favored to be the 49ers pick the year on draft day. It was Mac Jones that was still the favorite. So some of these odds might not be indicative of what's actually going to happen. Next one, Broderick Jones over under 14.5. This doesn't matter. Like, I'm not Can we just go Kevin, Jeff, Christian every pick? I think.
Sure.
Yeah,
don't
Kevin,
care.
you're up first.
I'm gonna say over. Over on this one.
Okay, Jeff.
I'm going to go under because I think that there are a handful of teams that are behind this pick where they want to tackle too. And I think the Jets are pretty married to tackle at 15. And I think that Broderick Jones and Darnell Wright are the only two sitting there, or I just think that teams know that one's going to go to the Jets. And I think that in my mind, the Patriots are pretty circled in on Zay Flowers. And I think that they'll be able to get him a little bit later. And it would be a very Patriots move to move back 3, 4, 5 picks, allow somebody to come up, get the tackle. And Broderick Jones feels like that guy to come up at 14 right in front of the Jets.
Yeah, I'm going over. I believe it should be under. I think he's my offensive tackle 1. I think his potential is insane. And I don't know if the NFL is going to feel the same way because some of the technical stuff is iffy right now. But I'm gonna go over. I don't think he makes it outside of the top 20 though. Next one, Brian Brzee, 29.5 is the line. Kevin.
This one's really tough for me. This is a really close line. I like Brian Brzee though. Like I really feel like Dallas could love him. I really feel like maybe even, when you're looking at what the Chiefs look at, like and where they're at. So it's like he's in that tweener range for me. So at 29.5, I'm gonna go under because I love the story and I hope that he battles back after what he's gone through personally.
Yeah, Jeff.
I'm gonna go over here. I have
Hater.
a lot to say.
Yeah, I'm going to go under simply because that's how I have it in my mock. But there is some rumblings that he could slip. Like he could be that one that falls actually all the way out of the first round. I think if some of those back end of the first teams don't take him, then he'll go early second. But that's a good line. Good job, Vegas. I'm sure they don't get their flowers all the time. Next one, Christian Gonzalez, 8.5 is the line here. Kevin.
I love Christian Gonzalez, but I think just based on the board and the way it shakes out, I think it's going to be over.
Jeff.
It's close.
Yeah, this is just a number that where do you think the quarterbacks go? And if in your mind the quarterbacks are going, then Gonzalez is going to hit the over on this.
I'm with you guys. That was actually the one thing in my mock draft. I'm writing it and I'm like, okay, Christian Gonzalez has to come off the board here. And I was like, they're not taking him. They're not taking him. So I think that could be the faller too. Dalton Kincaid, 24.5, Kevin.
This is the one I'm going to struggle with Kincaid. I'm going to say over 24.5.
Jeff?
I'm going to go under. I think that there are teams in that range. San Diego's sitting at 21. Or not San Diego, the Chargers. So it'll always be San Diego in my mind, but I'll go under.
I have him going 25 in my mock, so I guess I'm going to go with the over. I think Dan and Jeremiah just had him go like 13th overall or something. Yeah, to the Packers, I think. So could be way under. Yeah, something like that. So I'm going over here. Deontay Banks, 20.5, Kevin.
Give me over. I think 21 to 25 range in that range.
I'm going to go under. I think the physical traits pushes him up that a team kind of in the late teens grabs him.
Yeah, I'm also going to go under. Also, I should be mentioning the position in school. Deontay Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. Very good player, one of the most elite corners to ever test. So yeah, I'm gonna go under here. Devin Witherspoon, 6.5.
Over 6.5.
Yeah, corner from Illinois. I think that again. I think the Raiders would be an ideal landing spot, and I'll go over at. There you have the 7th pick.
I'm also gonna go over. I skipped that one because we had already talked about Devin. Hendon Hooker, quarterback from Tennessee. 31.5 in what I would call the hardest line of anything. Do you think he's going in the first or not, Kevin?
No, over.
Jeff?
I think he goes in the first. I think that 5th year is a factor that teams would love to move back, and so you're telling me is he going to be a first-round pick or not? So I'll go under.
I'll go over, but the 5th round option or the 5th year option that would put him at his age 47 season, so that'll be good.
You get his entire career if you take him in the first round versus you have to give him a second contract.
Exactly. Yeah, Team building.
Jalen, I don't know how you're a GM and you're like, yeah, Hooker's our guy. I'm gonna finish my career with Hooker. Like, I just don't see it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
Let's go get Davis Mills.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Jay Kaner.
Gosh. Speed round. Jalen Carter 6.5. Kevin. Jalen Carter is a defensive tackle out of Georgia. Kevin, now you go.
Over.
Jeff.
Under.
Over. Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver out of Ohio State. We've talked about him on the show. 12.5 is his line. Kevin.
Over.
F.
Over, but that's a good number because the Packers pick at 13. So if you really want him, you might need to jump the Packers.
Yep. There's been some top 10 buzz, but I'm going to go over. I think the Packers could very well take him at 13. Joey Porter Jr., corner out of Penn State. Over under is 19.5. Kevin.
I'm going to go under for Joey Porter. That's why I went over for Deontay.
I'm going to go over. The Steelers have the 19th pick, so that's a fun narrative with Joey Porter Jr., but I'll go over.
Yes, I'm also going to go over on this one. Miles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. 18.5 is his line. Kevin.
Over. Fall to 26, please.
Jeff.
Steelers do not have the 19th pick. I was wrong. That's the Buccaneers. But I'm going to go over Miles Murphy.
Yeah, I'm going to go over as well here. Just a weird narrative with him. Nolan Smith, edge rusher out of Georgia. 10.5 is his line. Kevin.
Oh, man, I love me some Nolan Smith. I'm going to go under on this one. I think he's going to sneak in there.
Jeff.
I'm going to go under, I think.
To pat myself on the back, I had him top 10 in my first mock this year, and I never wavered from it, and I'm kind of proud of that. I hope he goes top 10. And if he doesn't go in the top 10, I didn't say any of that information. Paris Johnson Jr., over under 9.5, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Kevin.
Oh, I'm going to go under.
Jeff.
Yeah, there's enough smoke on this one. I think we feel like this is a free line right now.
Under. Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver out of TCU. 26.5 is the line. Kevin.
Quentin, I don't know. Under. I'll go under. I think he sneaks under there.
I'm going to go over. I've got him falling out of round 1.
Oh, you're one of those people.
Unfortunately, I am too. Once again, another narrative that's just very strange right now. So
yeah,
I'm going to go over. I actually, in my mock, I have the Giants trading up in round 2 to go get him, which a lot of people want him to go in the first round to the Giants. Last one, Zay Flowers, 22.5 is the line. He's the tiny little wide receiver out of Boston College. Kevin.
How dare you? I'm going to say, I know that the Chargers are right around there. I'm going to go over, though. I still think he goes over.
I'm going to go under. I think that's a good position that either he's grabbed before that. He's betting odds to be the second wide receiver off the board now. But I do think that a team will jump if they want it, if he's on the board.
I thought we don't use betting odds anymore, or now we do because it's your pick. Is this how we do it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go under on this one. I think the Patriots are obsessed with this kid. And so I think that he's probably, if they sit at their pick, I think that's who they take. So that'll do it for the Sportsbook Rundown. That's the only game we're going to play today.
Only game. We're gonna roll through. We'll get back to our game. We'll talk about that stuff. But wanted to make sure we get the draft picks for you guys. Now we're gonna be back. One thing I want to make sure that we all mentioned before we get out of here, we're working on the rookie guide for you guys. So we did rookie guide 1.0, 2.0. We are now doing 3.0, which is going to be the big one when we're talking about updating fantasy landing spots and everything there. We're going to be doing this all for you guys, ready to go at the beginning of next week. Join Football Guys to get it. Get ahead of your league mates. I know a lot of people drafted next week early because you guys are excited. I see it on my sleeper already. Like, hey, draft starts Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Some are doing next weekend. So get into the rookie guide. Come join the site for all the great stuff, plus the rookie guide that we're going to give you guys for that. Rankings, everything for you. And it's going to be there for you early next week. So get into that early. Go join now. Just get ready for it so you can win your leagues. That's what we're here to help you with. But we'll be back next week, May 4th, Star Wars Day, baby. Until then, 9 p.m. Eastern, breaking down the draft. I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.